Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined as always by Scott Bogman and by Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, we're talking some key questions for the 2025 season from the Dynasty perspective. This is one of my favorite shows to do. It's very similar to a show that Fitz and I do with Debro on Fridays every week in season. I hope everybody checks that out. That's one is not a Dynasty. That's kind of a weekly preview, but I have said before, I kind of see my role on the show. Like, obviously, I have my own thoughts and opinions, and I'd love to talk about the Ravens and all that good stuff. But I see my role mainly as to get the opportunity to ask you guys the questions that I think our audience would want to ask if they were so lucky to be in a conversation with people like the two of you. So I like to take this episode, it's our 10 biggest Dynasty questions ahead of the season, and try to ask the questions that I think are on the minds of our listeners, the questions that they would want to hear a conversation about, that they would want to have a conversation about with you guys if they had the opportunity. So that's kind of my approach with coming up with these questions. Some of them are more player specific. A lot of them are more macro level, like about a position or about, rookies in general or what have you. So hopefully we'll have a pretty good mix here and we'll hit on some topics that the folks find pretty interesting. Does that sound good, Bogman?
Sounds great, man. I'm ready to go. Let's rock.
We'll go ahead and dive in. I do want to actually ask quickly, though, before I forget. Fitz, I think this is the first time I have talked to you since the Expo. How was it?
It was great. Hold on, Worm. I just can't get past the phrase people, if they were lucky enough to get into a conversation with me. Most people who do get into a conversation with me are like looking around for the exit door. So
I'm sure that wasn't the case in Canton. I'm sure you had a lot of fun conversations with the folks who were thrilled to talk to you.
Oh, there were some fun conversations, a bunch of them at George's Pub, of course. No, Canton is always a blast, the Fantasy Football Expo. Bob Long does such a good job of putting that together, and it's always great to meet up with so many old friends, meet new friends, meet fans who are just going there to like shoot the breeze and like talk to fantasy analysts about fantasy football. It's really fun. And, my voice was hoarse by the end of it. I was exhausted from not enough sleep. It was a good time.
I could still hear it a bit in the voice, honestly. Obviously, you're fully
That's just from yelling at the
getting
Brewers
through a
game
show,
yesterday.
but yeah. So, you're probably hoarse from you're wearing the Milwaukee hat just from celebrating the Brewers never losing a game anymore.
Unbelievable. So they were 25-28 at one point in late May, and since then they've won 77% of their games over a 2.5 month period. It's just pinch me, I'm dreaming.
Yeah. All right. Well, just a quick reminder for everybody that all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. From there, you can navigate to our dynasty rankings as well. Let's get started with our first question here. I want to ask you guys kind of from the perspective of a team, not a player, which NFL team situation is going to drastically improve this season, bringing up the dynasty values of everyone on the offense? I think of examples in the past like, the Texans, terrible landing spot. CJ Stroud made that into a good landing spot for receivers. So situations like that. Bogman, when you read this question, who's the first NFL team that comes to mind?
The Titans are the first one that comes to my mind for fantasy, right? And it's just Cam Ward is such a better quarterback than any of the mess that they had there last season. It was a lot of Will Levis making massive mistakes, Mason Rudolph being, for the world, Mason Rudolph is a very good quarterback. For the NFL, he's below average. So, they just didn't have a quarterback to raise all boats on this ocean of the offense. So we've seen improvements to the O-line. The biggest improvement is putting a functional NFL level quarterback in this offense with Brian Callahan, the same offense that, obviously the talent's on the field, but Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were made famous in, right? Like, I think the system is there. Now they have a solid quarterback and a wide receiver that matches up with him very well in Calvin Ridley, specifically on the deep ball. So I just think this whole offense should get better from Cam Ward improving everyone.
Fitz, what do you think about that one? Is that a team that you were considering as well?
It is. And the other thing I like about Tennessee, I think they're poised for success with their offensive line, which was they had a lot of injury issues last year, and now they're healthier. And they've also added Dan Moore and Kevin Zeitler. So like that could be like a top 5 offensive line, which would bode pretty well for Cam Ward, Tony Pollard, maybe some of these other guys. What we really need for Bogman's answer to be good, I think, would be like one of these pass catchers to step out of the fog, because it's pretty murky, but beyond Calvin Ridley. You guys know I'm a big Alec Iamaner fan. Who knows? Maybe
Okonkwo.
Okonkwo, maybe DK. Like if a couple of those guys stepped up and all of a sudden became useful dynasty assets rather than bottom of the roster guys, like that would be big.
Do you almost like obviously that would be good for just having more options, Fitz, but from the perspective of somebody who has been very invested in Calvin Ridley, do you almost like maybe not want that to happen? Like I kind of just want as much of a, clear runway for him as possible.
Selfishly, yes.
Yeah.
We want him to have the neighbors year, 170 targets. That's what we want for Ridley.
Yeah. Is there one guy in this offense, Bogman, that you think between now and this time next year will rise the most in dynasty value?
I think Iamaner has the highest, the ability to raise higher than anybody else because Ridley's already pretty high, right? Pollard is an old running back. I don't think he's getting much higher. I think Helm has a lot of runway to improve. Okonkwo has a lot of runway to improve, and then Iamaner has the most runway to make a big jump and become an asset. Right now, they're just kind of guys on the outside looking in from holding value. I think they could hold value if Ward makes them valuable, just like he did Restrepo last year and got Eli Arroyo to a draftable level as well. So he can definitely raise some of those guys.
Fitz, who's your pick here?
Yeah, this was just such a good question. Every time I think of a team, I initially think it was a great answer, and then I think about it and maybe not. But I kind of settled on Denver. Really good offensive line, a lot of young players with room for dynasty value growth. Bo Nix, who could kind of, I know people aren't low on him necessarily in Dynasty, but I think he could sort of validate the good feelings that people have after his rookie season, maybe take his value up another notch. RJ Harvey could certainly be considered a top 10 Dynasty running back if he catches a lot of passes this year and gives us some rushing upside. Marvin Mims, who Boggs and I were talking about this on our Dynasty Discord show the other night, like him playing 16 of the 19 snaps with Bo Nix and leaving the game at the same time as Bo Nix was really interesting because that suggests Mims is going to be a full-time guy this year.
I moved him up.
And I mean,
moved him up, Fitzy. You win that one.
Here's a guy who down the stretch last year was like averaging a touchdown a game and 62 yards a game, playing less than half the offensive snaps in all those games. Like his fantasy points per snap were insane. So he's a guy who could gain a lot of value this year. And maybe Pat Bryant too, a rookie who I think people are just sort of, waiting to see what he does before, like no one's clamoring for Pat Bryant. You could usually get him in the 4th round of rookie drafts, but maybe he could move into the top 40 or 50 for next year.
Bogman, would Mims be like the guy for you in this offense if you're picking somebody that you think would take a big step forward? This year, yes. I still really like Pat Bryant. So I think long term, Pat Bryant is a guy that I really like. But Marvin Mims, to exactly what Fitzy said, 16 to 19 snaps, unless in week 2 they take Mims off the field and they do it like a quarterback, and now Pat Bryant is starting with Bo Nix instead, which would be weird. But it's pretty telling even from week 1 of the preseason. I want to hear some honorable mentions from you, Bogman, but I do want to throw out, I'm not going to have picks for all these questions, but I was thinking about a team in mind when I put this question together, and neither of you guys picked it, and that's the Patriots. Just thinking about the Stroud example of a quarterback coming into a situation that looks really bad and the quarterback himself making that situation look good. If Drake May is the quarterback that I think he is in year 2, then somebody is going to benefit in terms of dynasty and 2025 value in that offense. Maybe it's a veteran like Stephon Diggs having another great year in him. Maybe it's a rookie like Kyle Williams. Maybe it's like a forgotten veteran like Demario Douglas. There are a lot of options. I think the running backs obviously could benefit, like Trayvon Henderson being the big one. And also the play caller. It's a huge upgrade in my opinion getting Josh McDaniels. So I think between the coaching staff and the quarterback, the Patriots were the first team that came to mind for me as one whose situation looks bad right now, given the offensive line and lack of pass catchers, relatively speaking, but I think could look a lot better by the end of the season. Bogman, who else were you thinking about? That's a good call. I like both those calls, by the way. Denver and New England, both teams that I didn't really consider. Specifically, for a big jump, I think New England is in for one as well. So that's a good call, Worm. The Jets, Bears, and Jags are the ones that I also considered, because for the Jags and Bears, it's mainly just like, let's just figure out this coaching. Liam Cohen going into Jacksonville, we saw what he did for Baker last year. That was huge. For Chicago, obviously Eberflus was a massive issue. And what no one was helping Caleb Williams become the best version of himself. Now they have that. So I think we could see massive improvements just from a coaching standpoint there. And with the Jets, it was a damn soap opera disaster nightmare there last season. So you should just see a big improvement no matter what. And I think, maybe the offense isn't great, but it will be more consistent this year with Justin Fields, and just, a better semblance from the top down of from an organizational standpoint.
Next question here, more of an assignment than a question. Fitz, I'll start with you on this one. Lay out your ideal quarterback room coming out of a Superflex startup draft, taking into consideration cost and ADP, of course, so you can't just say, I want Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Jaden Daniels, right? So in a Superflex startup draft, what is your ideal quarterback room considering cost?
All right, here's a reasonably priced trio that I would be delighted with. Drake May, Jordan Love, Michael Penix.
And what are the rounds you're getting those guys in, just for the listeners who aren't, looking at the ADP right now?
Well, I mean, I assume that I'm getting Drake May in the second round, and probably Love in third, maybe fourth, probably third, I guess. And I think you could probably get Penix like in the sixth in a startup, maybe seventh. So, nailed on the quarterback room in the first 7 rounds, and do it without getting a quarterback in the first round. So I know I've got like at least one non-quarterback superstar. I'd be pretty happy about that. And I would think I'd be set with my quarterback room for next 2 or 3 years at least.
Yeah, getting 3 quarterbacks with youth and talent and upside without having to spend that first round pick, because then you can get a Jamar Chase, or if you want to go the running back, take a Bijan or somebody like that, Brock Bowers if it's tight end premium. To get 3 really good quarterbacks without having to take one in the first, obviously is like, I think that's a huge win. Bogman, what do you think?
For me, I'm going upper tier. I want a top 5 pick. So I want one of those QBs, one of those top 5 QBs, the top 3, and then Hurts or Burrow. Then I want Caleb Williams in the second. Right now, I believe his ADP is around 22. So you could get him even if you're at 24, that last pick in a 12-man in the second round. You could probably still get him in some spots there. And then I'll do one of 2 answers for the third one. Obviously, I just talked about how much I like Cam Ward, but I also still am holding a candle for Richardson a little bit, just because the upside is still enormous. And he's a first round pick. He's going to get a longer look, even a different team, just like we saw Darnold and Fields, right? So that is my grouping. But I will, just for the sake of having to narrow it down, I'll cut A-Rich and I'll say it's Ward. So for me, it would be like, Lamar, Williams, Ward. In a super flex, I am spending my initial picks on the QBs because it's so hard to acquire them later, specifically if your team is good.
I want to follow up. Both of you picked 3 names, which is what I expected. That's kind of my thought too. Do you guys give any consideration to, hey, if it's in a super flex, again, these guys are never easier to acquire than in a super flex. We might be wrong on some of these guys. Injuries could happen. Did you give any thought to picking a 4th name and saying, like, I want to take another swing later, even if it's like a Jalen Milroe, or saying maybe Shook is better than we thought? Just one of these later round guys. Fitz, was there any consideration to throwing a 4th name out there? Or are you saying, like, I got my 3, let me just take swings at receiver and everywhere else?
Oh, no, I'm always going to, as long as we have, 28 or 30 roster spots like you get in a typical dynasty league. Yeah, I'm going to throw some darts at the Joe Miltons of the world. And
Jalen Milrose.
Yeah, I do want 1 or 2 of those guys on my team, ideally. Sometimes even worse than that. I've been known to carry around a Drew Lock type as my 5th quarterback. So not proud of it, but I'll admit.
Hey, look, but handcuffing in a super flex is a real, because, let's just say Sam Darnold goes down. Drew Lock is going to get the most fab money that week, even though he sucks, because he's a quarterback that starts. right? Like they're not going to go straight to Milrow, so it's going to be Drew Lock. I don't hate if you're drafting Caleb Williams. Bajan has looked good, and I like him. So I don't
Yeah.
mind handcuffing a
Or a
quarterback
guy,
in a league where you have
or a
spots.
guy like Josh Dobbs. Like if you've got Drake May, and Josh Dobbs is a guy who's actually put up some fantasy points in games he's been forced to start. So I don't hate that.
What about
Would
if
you
you have McCarthy? You gonna take Howell,
No,
Fitzy?
no.
I just love to hear Fitz hate on
And
Sam.
this Max Brosmer kid is better than Howell, I think.
Minnesota's own. Yeah.
Fitz, last question on this, because you didn't take a quarterback in the first. Let's say if instead of Love, you took like, I don't know, Josh Allen or somebody. Like you got like one of those elite guys at the top of the first, and then you got May in the second. Instead of taking Penix for your third guy, would you be more willing to say, like, I'll wait till it'll be like the last guy to take one of these starting quarterbacks because I've got two that I feel really good about? Because you kind of went three, like all in the first 6 rounds. If two of them were in your first 2 picks, would you maybe wait longer on that third one, or would you still want that third one to be like, one of the top 80 or so picks?
Yeah, I mean, like if you wait too long, your third guy is like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, someone whose career as a starter is coming to an end pretty quickly. So, like I'd still try to get that young guy like Penix who you could have for a long time, or like have a lot of trade leverage with. So
Yeah, if you trade away a quarterback in a super flex, you almost always win that deal.
Get ready for the ultimate fantasy football event. Fantasy Pros Fantasy Fest is back. Join us live on YouTube Tuesday, August 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern for 5 hours of rankings, sleepers, and top experts like JJ Zacharyson and Andy Behrens, among many others. And when it ends, the party keeps going on Twitch. Catch Welsh and Bogman playing Madden 26 live Tuesday at 7 Eastern on twitch.tv/fantasypros. That is going to be a very fun event. Always one of the coolest days of the year for us. Also, for like the third of the last 5 years, it's my birthday. So I'll have extra fun doing the Fantasy Fest stuff that day. Let's go to question number 3 here, guys. Who are the aging veterans that rebuilders should trade away, but might have at least one great season left in them for contenders? Bogman, you are a guy who likes the win now approach. You like the veterans. So I'll start with you here.
I got a big list. Obviously, I think Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, these guys are freaks, right? I think obviously those guys, it could be beyond this year. We don't know. So outside of that, it's Kamara, Connor. I think James Conner, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz. Those are the guys that I think have one more year. And then you are really leaning into falling knife and wanting to get out from under them after this season. Maybe Fitz even disagrees. Maybe there's some guys that you just kind of are out on because of their age. Fitzy is famously an ageist for Dynasty, as we know. But when it comes to these guys being able to help you win, they all can help you win this season. So if you're on the cusp and it's costing you a late pick, it's simply the math of this player is more valuable to me than he is to you. So it just makes sense that we have this exchange, right? So I think that is my group. The top 4 being kind of obvious, and I'm just unwavering until they actually show signs of slowing down. The other ones I'd be willing to get out from under pretty quickly, specifically if I'm not contending. But again, in a lot of leagues I'm contending, I'm trying to roster these guys because they're cheaper than they should be.
Fitz, were there any overlap with the picks you had with any of the names that Bogman threw out?
a lot of overlap, but I could add 4 more guys who I think fall into this category. Christian McCaffrey. Like I don't think he does a rebuilder much good, but he has immense value to a contending team because look, if he's healthy, he always smashes. Aaron Jones, to a lesser extent, I think falls into that category, and I think Jones is still going to be good. I know people are saying the Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason thing is going to be a timeshare. Fine. Mason doesn't catch passes, and Aaron Jones does. Like that's where the value is going to be for Aaron Jones, especially in Dynasty, because Dynasty is usually PPR. And then I'd put Stephon Diggs and Matthew Stafford in that category as well.
Are there any of these guys? Well, I mean, I'm sure there are. Who of these guys would you be willing to give up a 2026 first if you're a contender to get? Like McCaffrey, obviously very high ceiling. With the injury history, are you willing to give up a first? Like, are any of these other names you would go that extreme as a contender in getting one of these guys?
Yeah, maybe like McCaffrey, Henry level. Because if you're getting these guys, presumably you are going to finish top 2 or top 3 in that first. And 2026 is going to be 110, 111, 112. So I think I might be okay to sell my soul for rock and roll in that case.
What about Evans? You do it for Mike Evans?
Not a first, no.
I would still do it first for Mike Evans.
Because you do think these are likely to be late firsts, which does matter.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
All right, let's look at some backfields here. Which running back will end up being the correct answer in Dynasty in the following backfields? We're going to talk about Jaguars, Giants, Steelers, and Jets. Let's take these one at a time. We'll start with the Jaguars. Fitz, which running back will end up being the quote-unquote correct answer in Dynasty out of Jacksonville?
I'm going to say Bashal Tutin. It's not Tank Bigsby simply because he doesn't catch passes. And I know, I just think it's going to be too easy for the Jags to get off ETN, this being the final year of his contract, and eventually kind of shift to Tutin as their primary passing down back, who also gets some work on early downs.
Bogman?
I think it's Travis Etienne, but I think the real answer is probably none of the above out of this group. Maybe it's Tutin, maybe it's Etienne. There's been trade rumors with Tank Bigsby, a lot of Dallas chatter, right? Maybe they're looking for another power back, but Tutin's probably the best swing. I think Travis Etienne's the best player, but he just hasn't put it together. But I honestly think all these guys are working their ways outside of Tutin to becoming Jags. Tutin, I just have no idea, but and that's just a guy, not Jaguars, by the way, Jags. So I think they're just going. None of these dudes is going to advance themselves to a level that they cannot be immediately replaced by a high draft pick, a Jeremiah Love, a Nick Singleton, a Katron Allen.
I was going to ask, do you think the Jags and really any of these teams that we're talking about are good candidates for like spending a day 2 pick on a running back next year?
I don't think one of them. I would disagree with that. The rest of them all could.
Okay. How about the Giants? Bogman, I'll start with you on this one because they have your favorite player in the entire NFL. Who winds up being the correct answer in Dynasty for New York?
It's still Scatterboot to me. And I like the fact I don't like the fact that he's hurt, but I like the fact that people are bearing him because he's gimpy right now. This isn't a season-ending injury. It might be an annoying, nagging injury to Cam Scatterboot for his rookie season. That is a possibility, but the dude has carried a large workload before. I think he's the best in between the tackles guy. We saw Tyrone Tracy fumble a bunch at the end of last year. It's going to start as Tracy. I think it ends as Scatterboot, and I'm not coming off that.
Fitz?
I agree with Bogman for pretty much the same reasons.
Okay, let's go to the Steelers then. Bogman, I'll start with you again because another one near and dear to your heart. Who do you have in this backfield?
It's Caleb. This is the one scenario where I don't think the Steelers would spend another high draft pick on a running back. I think if they were going to do that, they would have done it this year with all the good running backs coming out, and they waited till the third to take Caleb.
They didn't have a second though, so
they traded it for DK. That's true, but they could have traded back in, if it was that big a deal, they could have not traded for DK. So I think Caleb is going to be the guy. I think if they add another piece, it's going to be a late piece. I just think Caleb is so obviously the guy. The one thing that worries me is if he is too slow, then it would be that scenario, but I just don't think he is. I think he is the guy with a bullet here.
Fitz?
Also, Caleb, just, insert a better version of Najee Harris into the Najee Harris role, and that could be really valuable.
Do you think there's any value to Jaylen Warren still, or are you trying to move off of him?
Yeah, I mean, because he's the pass catching back and we'll get some early down work. Like he could actually be a pretty useful fantasy asset if he could stay healthy for the whole season. So there is value to both guys in this offense, which is going to be pretty running back centric. I mean, look, they have no receivers after Metcalf. I mean,
and look, it's all of offensive linemen. They've spent the last 3 seasons rebuilding it and adding Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth. Like their goal is to run the ball down your throat. They want to be built like the Ravens and the Eagles right now.
It's an Arthur Smith offense.
Yeah. All right, Fitz, the Jets, and that would have been a silly question this time a year ago because they had a running back who was going top 5 in drafts, but at this point, I think it's a fair question. Who's the correct answer in Dynasty?
Yeah, I mean, I still think Breece Hall is most valuable, but you could say no one because I think they are going to all sort of cannibalize each other this year. Like, I think you're going to – I wouldn't be surprised if Breece Hall took a major haircut in his perceived Dynasty value. this year. And I don't know if like Brees Allen or Braylon Allen or Isaiah Davis are getting into the top 30.
Bogman, what do you think?
So this is the one where I think we're gonna pick the same guy, but we do disagree because I just think that I think it's all coach speak. I think once
Whoa.
you get Brees Hall out there, it's going to be really hard to take him off the field. So, and I understand in the preseason, they split it was 50% and then a quarter and a quarter. I do not care, Fitzy. When you have games that count, and you can't take your best player off the field. This is why Christian McCaffrey is injury prone now. It's because they refuse to take him off the field because NFL games are close. You want your best players on the field when they're close, and Hall gets more snaps as a consequence. I feel like
I think
in this offense,
Boggs is totally wrong about this. So like it was something that Aaron Glenn talked about all offseason, wanting to use all his backs. Then the very first game, Justin Fields plays 10 snaps. Brees Hall is only on the field for half of them. Isaiah Davis plays 3 of them. He's playing on passing downs. Braylon Allen gets a couple of snaps. Like, this is not just like a random thing. This is coaches establishing usage patterns that they are going to follow the entire season. Like, it's not nothing.
Yeah, listen, and I don't disagree that is the intention. I think that is the intention. But the path to hell is paved in good intentions here. I think that is what we want to do. But I think once it comes to executing it, and we've seen it done many times with many running backs, it just when it comes to crunch time, the best players on the field. So I could be wrong about this, and I will freely admit that. That is 100%. I could be incorrect, and I'll take the L if I am. I just feel like Brees Hall is way better than Braylon Allen. He's way better than Isaiah Davis. He's going to be on the field way more. I'm willing to be mistaken about that.
Fitz, what do you think about the question I asked Bogman about any of these teams spending an early draft pick next year on a Singleton or a Love or some other running back in this class?
Which teams of these would be most
Of
likely
the
to
Jags,
do that?
Giants, Steelers, Jets, do any of them stand out to you as candidates to do that?
I mean, probably most likely, I think, would be either the Jags or Giants. Jags, because Tootin is not a heavy duty guy, and maybe they decide they're not in love with Tank as an early down back. And the Giants are definitely going to be in the market if like neither Tracy nor Scadaboo turns out to be exceptional.
By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Think it sounds complicated? It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online fantasy front office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, guys, question number 5. Bogman, I'll start with you on this one. Which highly ranked Dynasty wide receiver is going to lose the most value this year for non-injury related reasons? Who's going to lose the most value this year for non-injury related reasons? Bogman.
I'm curious to see whether Fitz and I are going to have the same answer on this one. And this one is because of news that came out yesterday. Worm, to me, it's Rashee Rice, and I think people are going to be annoyed that he plays the first 4 weeks and then he has his disciplinary hearing with the NFL scheduled on September 30th, and then I think if Jordan Addison got 3 games for a DUI, maybe there's other things surrounding it. I think Rashee Rice is looking at an extended suspension into the playoffs. I think you're going to get the overcorrection going into next year, and we could have Worthy could step up and be huge. He was at the back end of last season when Rice was out. Jalen Royals is another pick that they have that could take a step up as well. So to me, it's, if we're talking non-injury related, like we just can't predict injury, it is Rashee Rice to me.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that these questions were put together before the latest update on Rice. I, you know, I find it just ridiculous that it just still keeps like kicking the can down there. It actually has nothing to do with the fact that this means he's going to get to play against the Ravens. I don't know that he's going to be that great in the first 4 weeks anyway, coming off the injury. So I actually don't even really care that much about that from that perspective. It's just like this incident happened like a year and a half ago or something. Like how are we still pushing back having this hearing? It's just crazy to me how much the NFL and all parties involved to kind of drag their feet on this. But yeah, Rice obviously has this kind of looming thing going on over his head. Fitz, do you think he's a good choice for this question?
I do. He's my runner-up selection, Boggs. I was
Nice.
definitely considering him. And like his ADP in Dynasty right now is wide receiver 16, which seems a little overinflated to me. And yeah, the thing I've kept mentioning with him is that when he broke out as a rookie, the other receivers getting a lot of playing time for the Chiefs were Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Justin Watson, and Sky Moore. And then last year when Rice got off to the hot start, Worthy really hadn't established himself yet. He hadn't gotten a foothold in that offense. Like Worthy is going to command a lot more targets than MVS, Watson, and Sky Moore did. Like he is going to be a real problem, I think, for Rashee Rice, and going to maybe keep him from being the target hog he has been early in his career.
Is there a chance though, Fitz, before you give your actual answer and we move off Rice? Is there a chance though, like if Worthy doesn't take, like let's just say he ran hot at the end of last season, he doesn't take that step forward. This time a year from now, we could be looking at Rashee Rice as a distressed asset that is maybe a very good buy low candidate because he will be 26 years old a year from now. He will theoretically no longer have any kind of suspension looming over him. He'll be another full year removed from this devastating knee injury. Travis Kelce probably retired, so that role wide open. If Worthy hasn't taken another step, I think we could be looking at a player who is actually maybe a really interesting buy low. I'm not sure that I feel very strongly about that stance, but is there a case to make on the other side of that coin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could make that case if we don't get the step up from Worthy, but man, he 50 catches over the last 8 games, playoffs included. Like it was a pretty sustained period of like really good play from Xavier Worthy down the stretch. So, like based on that, yes, if Worthy is not that good this year, sure, but I don't know. I think Worthy's going to be good again this year.
I love that you pointed that out, Worm, by the way, because I think what a lot of us do is we pick a narrative. We think that's going to be the way it is, and we run with it. We don't consider the other side, and I think you always need to at least consider the other side. The what if it doesn't go the way I think it's going to. Like I said with the Brees Hall thing, like I'm completely willing to be wrong on that. I just don't think I am, but I could be. It's the same thing here. Like Rashee Rice could absolutely be an undervalued asset next year if Worthy doesn't take that step up. Kelce retires. There's all kinds of other circumstances. Now he's 2 years removed from this ACL injury, right? Like, yes, he absolutely could be worth more. But if we're looking at non-injury related stuff, I feel like he's the guy that will lose the most value.
The more we talk about it, the more I feel like if I am a true rebuilder, like I'm not trying to win this year, I actually really like the idea of targeting him and just
Trade
for
for
that
him
upside
right when he gets
for
suspended
a year
then,
from now.
right?
And then if it doesn't work out, you're not expecting anything this year anyway. So I actually kind of think that if you can get him at a discount, I wouldn't pay full price for him, obviously. But
And trade for him when he gets suspended. I just want to reiterate that. Like once the suspension comes out and the owner is really frustrated because it's probably going to be more games than people expect, then go get him then.
all right, Fitz, who's your actual pick for this one?
It's Marvin Harrison Jr.
I knew it. Oh man, I almost guessed it. I knew you were going to say Marvin Harrison Jr.
And I still believe in the talent, but I also worry that he and Kyler Murray are just oil and water. Harrison was great on those in-breaking routes at Ohio State, and Kyler just does not like throwing over the middle. I hate that. I hate that the average depth of target for Harrison last year was like 13.4 yards. What are you doing, Cardinals? Drew Petzing. He is not a designated lid lifter. I mean, get this dude some like bubble screens and some easy completions and like stuff over the middle. You got to make this work with him. And I'm just worried that maybe it doesn't work with him. And right now, Marvin Harrison Jr.'s Dynasty ADP is wide receiver 11. People still think he's going to be a terrific player. So I do think he has like the most to lose as far as his ADP, because if he has another like 800 and something yard season, like he's going to go from wide receiver 11 to being somewhere in the 20s next year.
He kind of reminds me of earlier in the career wide receiver version of Trevor Lawrence, in that like this year I'm going into the Jaguars season saying like like we've seen the kind of
This
like
is it.
disappointing seasons. He's got to do it this year, or I'm just not going to buy in again.
Yeah.
It almost feels like an early career version of that, where it's only year 2, whereas for Lawrence it's year 5. But it does feel like for Harrison, it's like, okay, if he also disappoints this year relative to expectations, you just kind of got to reevaluate where you had him as a prospect coming into the NFL. So I think it's a good pick, and it's, I don't know if it's fair to say like he has like a shorter leash, like again, to compare to a guy like Lawrence who's in year 5 and we're still like somewhat interested in him, or a guy like Kyle Pitts who like you are still sometimes making the case fits for why it's an interesting dynasty, asset right now, multiple years in. But at the same time, if you like, I'm pretty much always willing to, if it's based on situation, or even if it's not based on situation, but based on most factors, I am almost always willing to write off year 1 for even the highest ranked prospects. It's year 2 where I start to say, okay, this is now a pattern. This is maybe just who this guy is. So if we get through year 2 and Harrison is still this like really disappointing, like touch point for people debating about, dynasty value and the way he's being used in this offense and all the different stuff that comes with the conversation, I think I could see him like people saying, no, like we're not going back to this well again.
Yeah.
Fitz, you need your Cardinals hater card. You're officially the Cardinals hater because you don't like Kyler, you don't like Marvin, and you're not the biggest Trey McBride fan. Do you like James Conner? What do you like about
Sure,
the Cardinals?
I do. Well, I mean, Cardinals, if we're talking St. Louis Cardinals, then yes, I am a Cardinals hater. But no, Arizona Cardinals, I'm generally fine with.
You don't like the St. Louis Cardinals either. You're not fooling anybody. So,
well, speaking of Trey McBride, let's go to a tight end question here. Right now, Sam Laporta is the consensus tight end 3 in Dynasty. I don't think anybody is going to try and make the case that Brock Bowers or Trey McBride is going to get knocked off their purchase tight end 1 and 2, barring something really unforeseen this year. So tight end 3 is a little bit more interesting. Obviously, Laporta has been tight end 1 in Dynasty in the past. Had a step back last year. There's more question marks about the offense again this year. So I want to ask you guys, we had 2 really elite tight end prospects coming in. They're not Brock Bowers level, but one of these guys went higher in the draft than Bowers did, and they are both still very highly regarded. So what are the percentage chances, respectively, for Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, or both, to surpass Sam Laporta in Dynasty rankings by the end of this season? Fitz, I'll start with you on this one.
I'll say Tyler Warren 50%, Colston Loveland 25%. I just think Loveland, too much target competition, maybe on the Bears with Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Luther Burden, and like Cole Kmet is still probably going to get some playing time. Tyler Warren, I just think like he's going to play a big role right away. So if the Colts can get even decent quarterback play, I think Warren could be a guy who gets fantasy managers, dynasty managers really excited for the future. But like Sam Laporta is not garbage either. So like
right.
he's still going to have significant value. I just, I like Tyler Warren a lot more than Colston Loveland for redraft this year. And I'm worried that I'm wrong about that because I know some pretty sharp people in my Kings Classics drafts at the Fantasy Football Expo were in on Loveland. So, but I think Warren has a better chance to pop this year. And I'm starting to think the guy is just a beast. So like before I used to have Loveland higher ranked in my dynasty rankings. Now I think I moved Warren ahead of Loveland, although I consider it just by a razor thin margin.
If I didn't limit it to these high-end rookies, if I kind of was saying pick anybody to be tight end 3 next year, were there any other names, Fitz, before I tossed to Bogman that you would have considered? Like, Mark Andrews gets hurt and Isaiah Likely becomes the guy we thought, or Tucker Kraft actually gets like way better usage this year. Like, is there anybody that comes to mind that, you would make the case for, or is it pretty much like barring some kind of injury, you think it's going to be one of Laporta, Warren, or Loveland in that spot?
I think it's one of these 2 rookies, but Likely or Kraft are probably the next best choices.
Okay. Bogman, what do you think? What percentage chance would you give these guys for being tight end 3 in Dynasty?
I said 50-50 on both. I think Fitzy is right. Both of them are dealing with issues, right? Both of them have 2 major issues. Both of them have a crowded situation, right? Talent is better in Chicago than it is in Indy, but I still think I'm a huge Josh Downs fan, just as a player. In fantasy, lukewarm because of the quarterback situation and crowdedness. But I'm a big Josh Allen fan just as a player. Obviously, I've raved about Pittman. I was wrong last year. It was a bad take for me, but also miserable quarterback play. I think there's meat on the bone for him to improve. We saw a nice year from Alec Pierce, and we keep hearing buzzy stuff about Adonai Mitchell. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Indy, but Warren should be out on the field. I think for Colston Loveland, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and the playing time is a question because Kmet is really good. I still think it's Loveland by a lot. I just think he's way better than Kmet, so I'm not as worried about that. But he has good quarterback play, whereas Tyler Warren has miserable quarterback play from either Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. Tight end is a tough position to come into the NFL and find success immediately. Doesn't feel like that because Brock Bowers just came in and set a bunch of records, right? We've had some tight ends come in and make a splash immediately recently. It's not typically the case for most tight ends. Usually it takes a little bit for these guys to jump in. But I think these guys both are going to be on the field so much that it shouldn't take much. So I would say 50-50 for both of them because, like Fitzy said, Sam Laporta is not a nothing. The other guy I would consider also is probably the one name we didn't mention was Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker Kraft being out there for like 90% of the snaps or whatever, where the wide receivers aren't, he could become Jordan Love's favorite target.
You did say Kraft, Boggs.
Did I say Tuck?
I threw out Kraft with likely just quickly.
Oh, my bad. I didn't.
I wasn't going to throw you under the bus the way Fitz just did.
My bad.
I do want to quick. We don't really have time to dive deep in this, but Bogman, is there anything to the fact that forever rookie tight ends did not make an impact, but it is happening more often recently? Like Bowers is kind of his own case, but like Laporta,
they're playing in the slot,
who we don't even think is very good, had 1,000 yards as a rookie.
They're playing in the slot. That's what it is. It used to be tight ends came in and you're like specifically your rookie season. If you're not blocking, you are going to learn how to block because if you can't block, you can't get on the field. It's not the case with tight ends anymore. Now it's your weapon. You're way more of a weapon than you are a blocker. So we're looking at you as a weapon initially. We'll figure out the blocking or we'll get somebody else to do it. That's why we have big slots in the NFL now, like Isaiah Likely and Kittle and guys like that. These Travis Kelce and Kittle and Andrews paved the way for these new guys. So yeah, I mean, it's where they use them and just the overall, I think learning curve of a tight end is different now than it was even 10 years ago.
If you want more trade advice, join the Fantasy Pros community on Discord and share your moves in one of our Dynasty threads. Chat with other fans and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Here's our current schedule. Boggs and Fitz at 5 Eastern every Tuesday through the end of August. Worm and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of every month. Welsh and Erickson Thursdays at 2 Eastern. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. All right, guys, 4 questions left here. Sticking with the tight ends, which rookie tight end drafted in the second round or later, so not the two guys we just talked about, is going to be ranked highest in Dynasty this time next year? I really like kind of the big 3. Obviously, you can make the case for more. I did leave it open for more than just the second round guys, but Mason Taylor has got his own injury thing he's dealing with. Elijah Arroyo and Terrence Ferguson. I really like all 3 of them as interesting Dynasty values. It could be those 3. It could be Harold Fannin. It could be somebody else I didn't mention. Bogman, you can go first. Which rookie tight end drafted in the second round or later will be highest in Dynasty this time next year?
I think it's definitely Mason Taylor. And I know he is dealing with the ankle sprain and all that stuff, but it's just that I don't know that anybody else has a chance to be the second option on their team. Maybe Fannin, but I think Fannin that's more of a lack of talent around him than it is him being amazing. So to me, it's Taylor because he's going to be on the field a bunch once he gets healthy. There's not a lot of competition for snaps for him, and there's not a lot of competition for targets. It's Garrett Wilson and nobody. So I like the talent of Ferguson, but you obviously have the 2 big guys there and the running game. Fannin and Gadsden are kind of role specific, and Helm is behind a Conquo. So I do like a lot of these guys. I don't think Arroyo sees enough targets as a rookie. They still really love AJ Barner. So to me, it's Mason Taylor by a wide margin out of this group.
Fitz, do you also see a big gap here between Taylor and the rest?
No, not at all. Harold Fannin is my choice here. I mean, 117 catches last year and more than 1,500 yards at Bowling Green, led FBS in both categories as a tight end. And the good thing is, plus the Browns don't have, a ton of talent at wide receiver. And next year, he is going to be playing with some sort of sexy young quarterback. Either Shador, like, blows us all away with how good he is, and everyone talks about how stupid it was that he lasted until the 5th round this year, or Shador is not that great, and the Browns use all their draft capital because they're probably going to have a top 3 pick because they're not going to be good this year, and they had that Jaguars pick for the Travis Hunter trade. They're going to bring in someone like Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller. Like, they are going to have a quarterback we're more excited about it this time of year from now, and that guy could pair pretty well with Harold Fannin.
I think it's worth remembering on Fannin that, like, prior to his really poor performance at, was it the Combine or the Senior Bowl? Where did he struggle? I can't remember now. I'm having a brain fart. Where he had some offseason that where he was did very poorly, and prior to that, we were talking about him like it was like the tier 1 of rookie tight ends coming in. This is very early in our conversations in like January. Was Warren, Loveland, and Fannin. Like, he was being discussed very highly. So worth remembering that he was uber productive in college, even
Yeah,
at a lower level.
and I'll agree with Fitz that I think Fannin has the highest ceiling out of this group by a decent margin, right? I just like Ben Sinnott, we really liked him. Where is he now? He's like nowhere to be found, right? It's just you have to find time on the field. There shouldn't be competition. He should get on the field, but I haven't heard, there's not been a lot of positivity about him out of camp. So I don't know. I'm lukewarm on him. I want that to be, I prefer that to be the right answer because I think Fannin has the highest ceiling out of anyone in this group. I just think the easiest path to playing time is Taylor by a lot.
Let's kind of stick with the rookie conversation here. I want to ask about the running backs in general. Very highly regarded rookie class of running backs. It was clearly the strength of the class this year. I'm wondering if you think they're going to live up to the hype this season, similarly to how the wide receiver class of 2024 set a lot of records with guys like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. and Lad McConkey. And, on the receiving end was Brock Bowers, even though he doesn't play receiver. That class, even though there were a couple of disappointments, lived up to the hype overall and did very, very well. Is this running back class going to be I'm not saying they necessarily have to set records, but will they live up to the hype? Bogman, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think they will. There are issues with this class right now, of course, but I do think, I mean, we saw Trey Henderson return that kick, right? That was awesome. We haven't even gotten a long look at Hampton. Genty was unbelievably lukewarm and bad in his first display in the preseason, right? So maybe people are down now. I'm not worried about those guys at all. I'm not worried about Caleb at all. I think he's definitely taking it. The little worries that I have, obviously Judkins, what the hell is happening?
So let me interrupt you here, Bogman. There was
Please.
a tweet actually 10 minutes ago, as of when we're recording this, from Andy Slater saying that Judkins will not face any formal charges from the alleged incident in South Florida. Prosecutors have declined to move forward with the case.
Wow.
So that's not us passing any judgment on the situation itself, but that's a report from Andy Slater as of 10 minutes ago. So if that changes, this is just what I'm seeing as
because
of
I
10
moved
minutes
him down
ago.
in my rankings
So
yesterday.
that is the latest update that we see on Twitter at the very least.
Yeah, I mean that's huge. But we also have like Cam Scattaboo's hurt, Jordan James is hurt, Jane Blue had work ethic issues. We've seen Brooks is still behind P. Ryan. I just don't think these things matter as much. This class is huge coming in. We're gonna have one dude randomly pop out and have an enormous season. I feel like out of nowhere because of an injury. Maybe it's Giddens, maybe it's Jordan James. You know what I mean? Like I think this class is good. I like the landing spot for a lot of them. And there's just too many opportunities, I feel like, for this class to fail as a class. So I'll say for the most part, yes, there's going to be duds in there for sure. Of course, it happens every single year. But I think for the overall, this class is going to be really good.
Fitz, you think it's going to live up to the hype?
I do. I mean, I think Genty is a truly special prospect. I think Omarion Hampton and Travion Henderson are close to sure things, barring injury. RJ Harvey and Caleb Johnson, both really, really good prospects. Judkins, the wild card right now, but I think Cam Scattaboo will probably be good. And then the only thing I disagree with Boggs on, I think we'll see more than one of this group, like later round group, produce. I think it's going to be more.
I think I said at least one.
Yeah.
So I'm with you.
Okay.
On that.
Yeah. Of like Giddens, Dylan Sampson, Taj Brooks, Woody Marks, Devin Neal, et cetera, et cetera. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, aka Bill. Like, these. I think we could see 3 or 4 of those guys pop.
Do you think if I took Genty off the table, that we'll see any of them have like really high end seasons, like some of those receivers, like, Thomas and Neighbors and Bowers were, I think, like all inside the top 6 in receptions last year. Would we see anything like that where it's like not just that they live up to the hype, but really like borderline set records as rookies? Or do you think it will be maybe a small step down from that, Fitz?
I mean, if Najee Harris doesn't play this season, what could Omari and Hampton do in a Chargers offense where they clearly want to run the ball? And this dude, like, I know Greg Roman's offenses generally don't target running backs a lot, but like Hampton absolutely has that in his skill set. So he could have a just smash season this year.
Hampton and Trey Henderson. I think Henderson also has it in him to have an enormous season. And a dude, I just in a recent chart, I got done comparing him to Achan. Like that's the skill set. Dude doesn't have to touch the ball 25 times to have a huge week. He could touch it 15 times and break a huge one. So
Yeah.
I think both those guys given a long runway. And the way I feel about Breece Hall, right, where I think he's just way better than competition, I absolutely feel about Hampton. I've watched Najee for years. Amazing human being, great person. I love Najee Harris. Football player, lukewarm average, better, a little bit better than a Jag in the NFL. And Hampton is a stud. I will say, Hampton has the exact same skill set I thought Najee had coming in. So there is that archetype has let us down before, but I have supreme confidence in Hampton.
Henderson, I think, one of my comps, not stylistically, but just like poor man's Jahmyr Gibbs, where I don't care if he's not getting a lot of touches early because he's going to break big plays and he's going to catch passes, and that's going to be really valuable. Yep. So love all these guys, obviously. There's a reason we really like the class. So another kind of rookie-related question, or at least a second-year player-related question. For as much as the 2024 rookie wide receiver class impressed, 2 of the 3 biggest names in that class disappointed relative to expectations. That would be Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze. Which of those guys has a better chance to bounce back and become a cornerstone dynasty wide receiver this season? Now, Fitz, you already kind of weighed in on Marvin Harrison Jr. stepping on this question when you picked him as a guy who you thought could maybe lose value, even if not having an injury this season. So maybe you could focus on Rome Odunze if you think he has a chance to become a cornerstone asset this year.
Here's the thing. I actually think Marvin Harrison Jr. is my answer here too, despite what I said. And I know that sounds like, I'm arguing on both sides of the fence, but
I'm with you, Fitzy.
Yeah, I mean, there's less target competition for Marvin Harrison Jr. And like, although I'm worried that, this terrible usage last year will persist and that he'll continue to not click with Kyler Murray, I also do think there's pretty enormous pressure on Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon and offensive coordinator Drew Petzing to make this work with the number 4 overall pick in last year's draft. Like, I think they have a mandate to make it work with Harrison, and maybe it doesn't, but like they're going to try. And I would imagine they're probably going to try to find some new ways to use him. We'll see. Maybe not. So it scares the heck out of me that he's going to have another disappointing season. But at the same time, it would not shock me if we saw like what we think is the real Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2025.
Bogman, you said you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the way the question is framed here, Worm, who has a better chance? It's definitely Harrison, because I just think that it's way less crowded in Arizona for him than it is for Rome in Chicago. I just think Rome has to make more or fewer opportunities. Marvin Harrison being a higher pick, all the things that Fitz just said, them wanting to make it work. I think they're going to force targets to him, and the target competition is way less for him than it is for Rome Odunze. So who has a better chance to move up? It's definitely Harrison. In the terms of who will move up, I think they're pretty equal. Like, I still believe in both these guys. I thought we were going to get a much bigger discount on Rome Odunze coming into this year because he was so unimpressive last year. I tried to get him in a couple spots. I just couldn't find anyone coming off of him yet. So I think it still, of course, costs more to trade for Marvin Harrison Jr., but I think it's more realistic than some of the offers that I had for Rome. Maybe I talked about it too much. Maybe it's a personal thing. Like, people heard me saying I wanted to go buy Rome and they knew they could fleece me or something. But yeah, I think that the opportunity has to be for Harrison, but I do think both of them improved from last year.
So Fitz, before we move off this question, then obviously you've waited on Harrison from a couple angles here. What do you think about Rome? Is he somebody that you think has a chance to step into the type of fantasy asset that we thought he was going to be last year? Because we were all really high on him, but I know you really loved him, and almost a little bit overshadowed because so much of the conversation was on Marvin Harrison Jr. Was Rome disappointing relative to expectations? Do you see a bounce back happening this season?
The only thing is, I mean, we had this opinion of Rome going into the off season, and like, yeah, he's probably going to be a guy who improves and takes a step up in year 2. It was a really terrible outcome, though, for Romo Dunze investors that the Bears spent the first 2 picks of this year's draft on a pass-catching tight end and a really dangerous, like, slot receiver in a Ben Johnson offense that sort of funnels targets to the slot. And, maybe all of a sudden Luther Burden is the new Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, man, I just those additions, I think, like, could sort of kneecap Romo Dunze's value for the next few years. Like, that's a problem.
Bogman, is Dunze, before we move off this, like, yeah, I know you said that he's going for would you want to be aggressive in trying to get him, or because the
Obviously
cost
not.
isn't there, you don't want to? I mean, it sounds like
Obviously
yes,
not,
no.
because
Yeah,
I wasn't able to do it.
yeah.
And Roma Dunze might be one of those frustrating guys where he just needs a change of scenery, right? He wasn't drafted by this regime. They obviously like Burden. They obviously like Loveland. So DJ Moore's not going anywhere. That is like my most staunch thing about the Bears is that people are like, I think DJ Moore is going to take it back. I don't think DJ Moore takes a backseat to anybody. I think he's a stud until he ages. I think age is what gets DJ Moore. I don't think competition ever gets him. I think he's an absolute beast. So, with that being said, that's one. Like, I know who DJ Moore is. It's figuring out the rest of it. And Roma Dunze is one piece. He's just as equal to being a stud as Loveland is, and Burden to me. I think Burden's really good too. So, I don't know if it's going to work in Chicago, but I do hope for it still.
Okay. I wanted to wrap things up with a little bit of a look ahead at kind of next year's class. We talk about this a lot, especially on like the Discord stages where we get questions about making trades and moving future picks and like what do we think about this class. And sometimes maybe we do talk a bit too much about how we really like the 2027 class. I know, Bogman, you've pushed back a little bit saying like there is going to be really good players in 2026 also. So as we kind of get here just a couple weeks away from the season, we get into the next couple of months where this is really where 2026 picks are going to be moving a lot more, I think, than they were this offseason when there's still kind of this, nebulous thing in the future. We're now like really into these are the next picks that are happening in your rookie drafts, in your dynasty rookie draft. So 2026 rookie draft picks, how much are they worth really at this point in time here ahead of the season, given what we know about just generally future picks being worth and what we know about this class specifically and just all of it? So just kind of a macro level view of Fitz. I'll start with you. How much are these picks worth really?
I mean, right now, I guess I'm looking at it like it's probably going to be in Superflex, maybe an average class, maybe a slightly below average. I mean, in one QB leagues, it's probably below average. Like we do have some
I would
interesting.
say it's well below average.
Yeah, well, I mean, so we think that now, and
Yes.
first of all, like some really good quarterback prospects with I mentioned before Klubnik, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier. I think I forgot to mention Lenore Sellers, who's got sort of the Cam Young skills or Cam Newton skill set. So pretty interesting QB class, but then like I don't know, maybe the running back and wide receiver prospects don't look great to us now, but there are going to be guys we fall in love with once the college football season gets going. And I was spending some time on Mock Draft Database looking over the 2026 prospects the other day, and I think they projected 10 wide receivers going in the first 2 rounds. So, like, not the star power we're going to get in 2027, when Ryan Williams and, of course, Jeremiah Smith come out. But, like, there's some intriguing prospects for sure. It's not going to be as good a running back class as this year's was. I don't think there were any tight ends projected anywhere close to the first round. So, all in all, maybe sort of a weaker class, but like we'll see. We could consider it average and maybe even like it by the time 2026 rolls around.
I wonder if it's an interesting year, Bogman, if we think that there's not as much star power, but there are a number of quarterbacks, and B, maybe some real depth at a position like receiver. If picking late as a contender and theoretically getting with like that 10th, 11th, 12th spot is maybe actually like you can view it through a normal evaluation of like, hey, maybe it's a down class at the top, but those picks are still going to be like pretty good options, guys that could really pan out in Dynasty. Not to say that if you're a contender, you shouldn't trade away your picks because of that, but I wonder if it's more like those elite picks, like, oh, you're not going to get an Ashagenti or whoever at the top. So like tanking, might not really be that beneficial, but those later picks maybe are more along the lines with how they are in other years. What do you think about the class in general?
Yeah, I think right now the class is below average, right? I think that's how you kind of have to view it, is that the class is below average. And for that reason, I feel like 2026 picks are worth far less than 27 picks right now, even though you have to wait an extra year to see the light on those 27 picks. But I'll say this. What we don't know right now is who is going to lead this class at some of these positions. Like, who is going to be the number one running back? Probably Jeremiah Love. But after that, Malachi Hughes is a nice addition. Nick Singleton, Jonah Coleman. What we do know for sure is that there are going to be some good QBs at the front of this class. So I think that for that reason, if you're looking for a quarterback, this is the class that you should be trying to get into. Maybe we don't get Arch, right? Maybe he doesn't come out like his grandfather said. I think it's probably about a 20% that he does come out. I think he's definitely going back to Texas. I think this has been his plan the whole time. But even if he doesn't come out, like Fitzy said, you have Nussmeier, Klubnik, Sellers, Aller, Leavitt, Francisco Mendoza, John Mateer from Oklahoma, if he is really an NFL level quarterback,
Well,
has
if
great
he doesn't
wheels.
get suspended for gambling.
I don't think he was actually. Just
I
that
know. I
stupid
agree,
Venmo
but
stuff. But
yeah.
it's a story going on right now. That's a major story. So I think if you're looking for a quarterback specifically, you're in a super flex league, this is a good class to get at the top of, because there are good options beyond just Cam Ward, right? This year was Cam Ward, maybe Shedeur, maybe Jackson Dart. Ended up being just Ward and Dart in the first, and then a bunch of guys late. But I think this QB class is solid, and I think a lot of these guys are going to go early. I think there's a lot of need for QBs. So if you need one specifically, that is the crux of this class. I think we will see running backs and wide receivers raise. I think there's a good group. It's just separating them right now. There's a lot of murkiness in that. So they'll rise to the top. So they'll be worth more at draft time than they are now, I feel like, but it's not a guarantee. So they're just not worth as much as 27 picks.
All right, we'll go ahead and wrap things up there. Got through a ton of interesting topics there. So a really fun episode. Appreciate everybody tuning in for that one, and appreciate you two for chatting through some of these questions with me ahead of the season. For Bogman and Fitz, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.